So this took place only a few months ago. Sometime in early July, I wanna say anyways. My friend was over and had to make a run to Walmart. It was about 9 p.m., not too late, but a time my mother normally wouldn't let me out and about at. But given that I was graduated, me being 18 and my friend being 19, my mom let us go. A quick plan to get garbage bags, something that should have taken 5 minutes tops. Ended up taking half an hour. We got in, got the garbage bags, and walked around for a bit. We just kind of fooled around, browsing and talking and whatever else. During this time, I noticed that my friend was acting kind of weird, but I brushed it off. We were standing in line ready to check out. My friend leans in close and says, "Hey, do you see that guy?" I glanced up but didn't know what she was talking about. I still feel really guilty about this, for being too dumb to notice. We started walking away after checking out. Buying only garbage bags doesn't really take a lot of time. As we were leaving though, she started to explain. There was some dude that had said hello and was being polite, so she said hi back. We then saw him at the checkout too, both of us being paranoid naturally. We thought something might be up about it. We get in our car, and we see him in the parking lot again. No big deal yet, I suppose. Deciding to play it safe, we decided to wait until he left. Turns out he had a couple of guys with him. They pulled over on our left, littering at us through the car windows. It was nearly dead silent in the car, but I swear, you could hear our hearts beating frantically. Even typing this up, I still get panic. The car of guys quickly spit over parking next to us. My friend immediately floored the car, pulling in reverse and speeding out of the parking lot. But the guys followed. We honestly thought we were going to die, whether it be from going 80 miles per hour or by a group of creepy dudes. We quickly sped out of there, making a turn on some random road. In the car of guys behind us at all times, going as fast as we were. At one point, they ended up passing us and waving, before pulling into a church parking lot ahead, and turning around to get behind us again. At this point, we're still going 80 in the 35, and getting closer to my house. Neither of us wanted to lead the guys to our homes, so we thought fast. Near my house, there's a little store where you can buy cigarettes, alcohol and candy. Pretty much a gas station, but without any gas pumps. We hauled ass to the back of the store, parking and moving to head in through the back. One of the workers was outside in the back and approached us. All we had to say and had time to say was, "We're being stalked." Luckily, the guy understood exactly and started to go up front. We peeked around the corner and lo and behold, the group of guys were there around front. My friend and I proceeded to sneak in through the back. Now in the back on the left side is a deli station, and the right side is where the alcohol is. My friend ducked into the deli station, and I hid out on the right side. There was a female worker in the deli, and my friend made a signal for her to be quiet. And the female worker pretended we weren't there at all. After a couple of minutes pass, we hear the front door open. I peek around the corner and it's one of the guys. I hide out and back, heart racing, hoping he doesn't come back here. Finally, a few more minutes pass, and the guy worker from before comes into the back and tells us that the guys are finally gone. He chewed them out. Oddly enough, they flat out admitted to stalking us. When the guy worker pretended to be family, they quickly backed off, claiming they were only getting beer. Learned from the female worker that those guys are regulars and are always going out. About creepy and sexist crap in Spanish. Thinking she doesn't know, my friend and I ended up hanging out for a little bit, just to make sure the guys weren't hanging around on a street corner. Totally grateful to the guy and girl working there, because they were in complete understanding and worried about us. I live in a military town, So everyone here is either in the military, like my husband and I, or they're the locals. Backwards redneck type you find near the Bible Belt. Most of the general population is pretty poor. A lot of homeless. A lot of there's not really any nice way to put it. Lots of white trash type folk. I live near a Walmart that I usually go shopping at. And during the day, it's filled with your usual Walmart shoppers. At night, however, it's usually pretty full of weirdos. Some normal people are there, of course, just trying to grab some last-minute groceries, or medicine or whatever, but some people there just don't have anywhere else to be, or they're high or drunk. And Walmart is open 24/7, so they just come hang out there, like it's a damn arcade or something. Anyway, it was like 11:30 at night, and I realized my daughter was out of formula. I have to make her bottles for the day, every morning for daycare. So I had to go get the formula before morning. I told my husband I'd be back in a few minutes, and drove down the road. In the baby aisle, I grabbed her formula, and stopped to look at a cute dress for her. I was looking through the baby clothes, when I saw someone under the corner of my eye, and felt the hairs on my arm stand up. I glanced at him and then did a double take. This man was standing there just staring at me. He didn't even seem bothered by the fact that I had noticed him. I did this weird, nervous fake laugh and said something like, "Oh, these are so cute, huh?" He didn't say anything, just kind of smirked and kept staring. The dude was like a few inches taller than me, maybe 5'9", white with long hair. And he looked either homeless or severely down on his look. He had one hand on the crotch of his pants, kind of nonchalantly, like it just rested there. It was maybe 6 feet away from me. I started to get nervous and feel my palms start sweating. I said something dumb about having a good night, and just kind of fast walked away. But in my haste to get away from him, I turned left toward the back of the store, and decided to grab a 12-pack of Coke Zero, in addition to the formula, and then decided to get out of there. I hadn't grabbed a car, so I couldn't really carry much more. On my way back to the front of the store, I heard him shuffling behind me, keeping pace with my speed walking. I got into the 10 items or less line. He got in the line behind me. He had no items, but pulled the candy bar off the shelf and set it on the counter behind my stuff. At this point, I could smell him, and he stank like body odor and stale beer. I turned my head away from him and tried to move a little closer to the woman in front of me. He moved closer too. Suddenly I felt something brush against my left butt cheek. I turned towards him and sharply said, "Hey." He mumbled an apology. Keep in mind, I'm wearing jeans and a baggy t-shirt. Not that it should matter, but I look like crap is what I'm trying to get at. I turned my back towards the counter, and the cashier started bringing up my 2 items. 2 seconds later, the man pinched my other butt cheek hard. At this point I turned around and said very loudly, "Hey, stop touching my ass." He turned red and the cashier froze. She asked me if there was a problem, and I replied with yes. This guy just pinched my butt, and I don't know him. He's creeping me out. She looked unsure of what to do and asked him to please step away from me before she called security. He did warnlessly, and then just stood there glaring daggers at me. I pretended I didn't notice and paid for my things. As soon as she bagged up the stuff, I booked it out of the store. I got maybe 10 steps into the parking lot when I heard the doors open behind me. Panicking, I turned and saw marching directly towards me. I bolted. My car was 2 lanes away, and I yanked out my keys and unlocked it when I ran. I could hear him behind me grunting and panting. I felt adrenaline kick in and tears in my eyes. I ran swinging the bag and case of soda, flung myself into the driver's seat, and turned the key in the ignition before the door even shut. I threw it into reverse without looking, just as he slammed his body onto the hood of my car and yelled something. I peeled out of the Lord at almost 30 miles an hour, and he flew off my hood and into the ground. I drove the mile home, going well over the limit, breathing hard, and feeling like I was going to hyperventilate. When I got home, I still had chills. I raced inside and locked the door. My husband wanted to go find him and beat his ass in. Solution for pretty much everything. But I just wanted to shut the windows and crawl into bed. I don't know what makes people do the things they do. Don't they realize how terrifying they come off as? I don't even want to leave my house without a mace and taser anymore. I live in a very populated city, and in approximately a 5-mile radius of my house, there's at least 3 major grocery stores, one of which is a Walmart. Being a 16-year-old girl, I visit Walmart regularly if I need notebooks or something for school, or if I want to browse makeup and things of that sort. I've never been uncomfortable going shopping by myself. I actually enjoy it, and I've never had any bad experience as being on my own. Until one day a few months back. On this particular Sunday, my parents were working, and my little brother was at a baseball game. So I've been home alone all day. I need a body wash and new lanyard for school, and the school I attend requires we wear it around our necks on a lanyard. I think most high schools are doing this now, and it's becoming more common. Anyway, mine broke the Friday before. So that was my main reason for going out. I got to Walmart and parked like I had 100 times before. Went in and went straight ahead to the purse section, where the lanyards were. I walked down the aisle and there was a man looking at wallets hanging on the display. I didn't think much of him. He was probably in his mid-50s, average height and weight, wearing jeans and a brown t-shirt. He just kind of looked like an old grandpa. "Hi there," he said with a big grin. "Hi," I replied with a grin myself. "How are you doing today?" "I'm good, how are you?" I said, still browsing for a lanyard I like. "Great. I'm just doing some shopping today." Another big smile. I thought it was weird that he explained that he was shopping, since I could clearly see him looking at all the wallets on the racks, and I would have just assumed he was shopping anyway. I decided it was nothing and moved on my way. I found what I needed and made my way over to the body wash. I was in no rush to be anywhere, so I was leisurely walking up and down the aisle, smelling anything that sounded interesting. He walked by the aisle I was in and smiled again. At this point, I was a little bit uneasy. I've always been taught to trust my gut instinct, and something just didn't feel right to me. I had never had a conversation with anyone in this Walmart before, and now it seemed that this man was following me. I texted a friend of mine to tell her that I thought I was being followed and where I was at. As a precautionary measure, I decided that maybe it was a coincidence. I mean, maybe he could have needed soap too. So I continued on with my shopping. I went a few aisles up to the face wash, and then when I had what I needed, I walked around the corner when I ran into him for the third time. "Excuse me, young lady. Can I tell you something?" Sure," I said with a quivery smile. "You're very beautiful." "Oh, thank you." I was very uncomfortable at this point. "Are you married?" Mind yourself that I'm only 16, and definitely didn't look old enough to be married. "No," I said, adding a little nervous laugh at the end. "Me either," he said, with a grin that turned my heart to ice and made my stomach turn. "Do you have a boyfriend?" Yeah," I stammered, as I forced a smile on my face to try and hide my fear. I didn't have a boyfriend at the time. He began to speak again when a man, probably 17 or 18, standing in the aisle perpendicular to us, looking at cologne, walked over and said, "Yeah, she does. She's with me." He gave me the biggest smile and stood super close to me, as if he was the boyfriend I had said yes to having. "Oh, I figured," said the man. He seemed very uncomfortable at the presence of another male. "Well, good luck, you two." And with that, he walked away. I turned towards the man and thanked him for coming to my rescue. He said he could tell by the tone of my voice and the look on my face that something was up, and was hoping I would play along with him. He walked me to the checkout to make sure the man didn't follow me out of the store, and I was cautious before turning onto my street, since I lived so close to the store. That was the last I saw of either of them. I have no idea what the old man's intentions were, but sometimes you just know in your gut that something is wrong. And that day, I knew something about him was terrifying and sinister. I'm so grateful for the guy who helped me out, but to the old man who was following me in Walmart, let's never meet again. So it started out as your typical Friday in a relatively busy Walmart here in Texas. To give you some background about myself, I worked in loss prevention at Walmart for 7 years and was a loss prevention manager at this store when this particular incident took place. For those of you who don't know what loss prevention is, it's not those guys in uniforms driving around in the golf carts in the parking lot carrying a walkie-talkie. It's an extremely difficult job where we dress in plain clothes, acting like normal customers to catch shoplifters. My job as a loss prevention manager was to focus on employee theft and inventory control on the store. The store this incident took place in was a major city here in Texas that was close to downtown, in the middle of an old neighborhood that attracted all the riffraff and your basic druggies looking for some quick stuff to steal or sell. So like I said, it was a typical Friday in summer of 2009, and I was working in the stock room, doing audits on high-price merchandise and talking to store management. There had been a few safety issues in the store, and I wanted to bring it up to them. I had just finished having a meeting with my loss prevention agents and told them I would be in the store until around 8 or 9, finishing up the audits, and if they needed help stopping a shoplifter, to call me. Other than that, I was just going to try to finish my work as fast as possible and leave. The store was pretty busy as I walked into the stock room and began my audit. I had just finished my first one and was about to start my second when I hear store management call me over the radio, asking me to come out to the front of the store. There was a customer screaming, and they needed help removing him from the store. We really weren't supposed to let the customers know who we were, since we were the loss prevention team, but I decided to walk up there and make sure everything was okay, and if they needed my help, I decided I would call the police. As soon as I walked out from the back of the store, I could hear some customers talking and looking towards the front. I figured it was just an unruly customer who wasn't getting what they wanted and had decided to raise hell until they got their money back. Walking through the clothing department, I could hear shouting and customer screaming, "Help me!" My walking pace had turned from a jog to a full sprint to get to the front of the store. When I finally reached it, near the registers, I encountered one of the craziest, mind-blowing things I've seen in my 7 years of working at loss prevention. There's a man, almost completely naked, wearing some very dirty boxer shorts. He's chasing customers and growling like a dog or some kind of wild animal, flipping over baskets and acting like he's possessed. By the time I get to the front, he's flipped over everything, and he's starting to knock merchandise off the shelf, all while acting like a rabid dog and foaming at the mouth. I approached the crowd of employees and customers, immediately telling everyone to get back for their own safety. At this point, he's worked his way into the optical department, and I started pulling glasses down from the displays and throwing them onto the floor, shattering them. I suddenly remember my agents didn't have the walkie-talkies on, and I was going to need help getting this guy under control. I grabbed my cell phone and handed it to the closest cashier, telling her to dial the phone number of one of my agents and get whoever answers the phone to come help and to bring the handcuffs. At this point, I'm thinking about safety, and I make sure that everyone's a safe distance away. As I approach the crazy man from behind, I subdue him with a quick trip to the floor, holding him down until my agents finally arrive with handcuffs and the police. The crazy thing is, as I'm holding this guy down, waiting for help, he begins to lick my shoes in the floor, speaking incoherent gibberish, kicking and screaming. I look down at his feet and see they're raw, from apparently running around the neighborhood, barefoot naked, chasing random people. After the police finally arrive, and he's loaded up and taken away, the outside security hands me a pile of clothes that he had apparently left. There was a trail off the parking lot, and in the shopping center next to the Walmart. After this incident, I spoke to the police officers that had showed up to help, and they told me some pretty scary stuff. They said he was on some type of drug, like bath salts or meth, and it made him completely lose his mind. He'd been acting like a wild animal, chasing and attacking anyone he could get his hands on. They also told me that he screamed and howled the whole way to the police station like a banshee, until they finally got there, and he vomited all over himself. It was approaching one of my niece's birthdays, and she's at the age where I think she would appreciate a gift from her uncle. I'm a poor college student with no car, so I commute everywhere and anywhere, knowing that I always take my backpack and headphones anytime I leave the house. So I'm at Walmart, and I have this care package planned out for my niece. She loves Elsa from Frozen, so I decided to get her a costume, maybe a doll and some candy, all Frozen themed of course. Like I mentioned earlier, any place I travel to, I usually have my headphones in. This is kind of a pain to explain, but this detail kind of defines the whole story. Now I'm so lazy, I normally use a third-party music app instead of the music app included on my iPhone. Unfortunately for me, this requires a good internet connection, and living in rural parts of Denver, my music ends up cutting in and out, and then stops playing altogether randomly. Now at this point, I have one item left on my list, and I'm in the toy section of Walmart looking for an Elsa toy that my niece could take care of. Before I even know it, this mom comes and leaves her two children beside me. I'm not sure why, but this has happened before. Maybe I just have a trustworthy face. Let me tell you all something. Now I'm not fucking stupid. There are so many strange things that happen in this world that I would have to be a fool to leave these two young children alone. And for the record, I didn't know these people at all. It's kind of a pain, but I figured that it's just me being a good person. I mean, I don't even know how some people can do this. This is literally a woman leaving her two children at a section of the store and telling them to wait there for a while. Anyways, one girl is around 3 years old, and her little sister looks to be about 1 or 2. These girls are fucking sitting ducks here, man. The older sister had one missing crock, and her younger sister had pajamas on and a pacifier on her mouth. I felt even more obligated to stay until their mom came back. And it turns out I was right. Not even 5 minutes had passed since their mom left, when some fool came up and started talking to the girls. This tool said all the same generic stuff any pedophile would say. I have lots of toys and candy in my car and a dog too. I was just sitting there like, is this guy fucking serious? He probably thought I wasn't listening because I had my headphones in. But like I said, my music had cut out some time ago. As soon as he mentioned his dog, I immediately made my way up to him. He was crouched down talking to the girl about the stuffed animal she had in her hand. Hey, my dog is really big. He's not pink, but he's nice. Would you like to come and meet him? I crouched down and pushed the girl back a few steps. Immediately the guy moved back a few steps himself. I extend my arm and made a gesture saying not today. I give the guy a very harsh look, like I knew exactly what he was trying to do. I just stared at him very attentively. The guy was very short in stature and had short, stringy hair with a tan pilot jacket. He was also wearing some very beat up, New Balance tennis shoes. For all intents and purposes, he looked very plain. At this point, I was about to pounce on him and hold him down. I'm not even a big guy myself. I just don't stand for any of this pedophile kidnapping bullshit. Before that could happen though, he immediately got up, turned right and ran out the garden exit. I waited with the little girl and her sister until their mom came back. I gave her the speech. Yeah, you shouldn't leave your children here alone. Some guy was talking to the one about some generic kidnap bullshit. Those were basically my exact words to her. I mean, there's no being soft about what had just happened. Anyways, I told her she might not be so lucky next time. The mom just shook her head up and down and swallowed any spit that it was in her mouth with a very harsh gulp. I don't know if something bad would have happened, but if my music had not stopped playing. Let's just say that neither of those girls was old enough to defend themselves. How they could barely speak. I worked as a Walmart cashier for a little over a year. I quit in August of 2015 when I went away to college. As a cashier, you see a lot of people in the day, especially at Walmart, and after a while, you don't even see people's faces when you look at them. But there are some people that you see so often, you start to recognize and sometimes learn their names. There was this one guy, always in the same Green Bay Packers hoodie, in Chicago Cubs baseball cap, that would often seek out my line, no matter how long it was, just so that he could stare at me and rarely ever say a word. Whenever he did say anything to me, he would always lean across the register to get a closer look at my face. He always gave me a really bad vibe. But when I asked the other cashiers about him, they said that he had never been weird around them. One of the girls even said that he was a close family friend. After that, I sort of dropped the issue. One night after I've been there for about a year, I was working at 2 to 11 shift. Those shifts were always the worst because you would be there for 3, sometimes 4, front-end managers CSM. But also because it takes the chunk out of the day where you can actually do anything. So I'm down on the self-checkout. It's about 10:15 and I'm counting the minutes until I can shut it down at 10:50. The creepy guy comes in the front door and makes a beeline for me at the self-checkout podium. When I see him come in, I instantly get nervous. He walks up and says, "Can I still buy a phone card and electronics?" I told him that I only worked as a cashier on the front end, so I didn't know anything about the electronics section. But he could go back and check. He seemed peeved by this answer, but he walked away without another word. About 10 minutes later, he comes up with a prepaid phone card and says, "There's no one at the register on electronics." I activate his card and hand it to him, telling him to have a good night. But he pushes the card back at me without saying a word. And I say, "Is something wrong?" To which he replies, "These minutes aren't on my phone yet, are they?" I was confused by the statement because of course they weren't. He had just bought the card. I shook my head, and he waved the card in front of my face. "Why the fuck are you just standing there? Reactivate my phone." When he talked, he was so close to my face that I could smell his breath. And I was scared. I wanted to put in a call to a CSM so that someone would come down and help me. This is where I should probably mention that I'm about 5 foot 3 inches tall, and he's closer to about 6 foot 5. He's also very stocky, so he was towering over me. In the thought that he could easily overpower me crossed my mind. But I get so nervous whenever men yell or cuss at me, because my dad was never the type to yell or cuss. I took the card out of his hand, and he slammed his cell phone on the scanner. I was trying not to let him know that I was nervous. But inside I was terrified. I knew that I had never put minutes onto a prepaid phone before, but I don't dare tell him that, in fear of what he might do. So I read the directions and pick up his phone, dial the number, and as I'm putting in the card number, his phone runs out of minutes. I try to call back and get an error message. I'm at a loss, so I meekly hand him back his phone and say I'm sorry. Something went wrong. I don't know what's happening. As soon as I say it, he takes his phone, opens it up, tries to dial someone, and when it doesn't work, he looks at me with furious eyes. He screams, "What the fuck did you do to my phone? What the fuck?" His voice is echoing all around the store. But unfortunately, we haven't got the end of second shift rush yet, so there's no one around. He closes his phone and opens it again, trying to make another call, but when it doesn't work, he throws his phone down on the scanner again. He says, "I don't know what you did to my phone, but you better fucking fix it." This comes much more quietly, practically a whisper. At this point, I'm worried he's gonna put his hands on me, and I don't know what to do. I put in a call for a CSM from my register, and then say, "I've called someone that might be able to help. But we're at a shift change right now, so it might be faster for you to take it to the customer service desk." He picks up his phone off the podium, still mumbling under his breath that I fucked it up, and I'm hoping I can get out of there before he comes back, or at least have someone else down at the self-check with me. Another 15 minutes go by and I don't see him again, as I'm picking up the items that people left by the registers, getting ready to shut them down for the night. He comes back and stands by the podium. He looks completely pissed off, and my stomach sinks. He made that finger motion that means come here, without saying anything, and for some reason, that made me even more nervous. When I'm standing right in front of him, he leans in so close to my face that I think he's about to kiss me or bite me, or God knows what. I try to take a step back, but he takes a step forward when I do. A creepy grin comes across his face as he says, "The girl up there fixed it. Simple fix, but next time, I expect you to know what to do, understand?" I nod because at this point I don't think I can speak. He gets impossibly closer before saying, "I'm sorry I raised my voice. I never should have done that. Especially to a pretty girl like you." When he adds the last part, he lightly uses his fingertips to brush my bangs to the side. I took a step back and he says, "Let me make it up to you. Let me buy you a drink." I shake my head and say, "No thank you, I'm only 19. So we'll get a couple of beers and go back to my place." Again I shake my head. "No really, I'm not really much of a drinker. I have an early morning tomorrow." He looks displeased with this answer and says, "Tell you what, I'll wait over here by the door, just in case you change your mind." I smile at him weakly and tell him to have a good night. When I see him walk through the security things, I quickly shut down the registers and sign out of mine. Then I run over to find a CSM and tell them about the whole thing. The third shift CSM that I tell looks at me like I'm lying. When I'm finished they say, "I know that guy. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He doesn't have it in him. You're just being overly dramatic." She then turns to another older cashier behind her, shakes her head, mumbles teenagers. I asked if I can have someone walk me to my car, and they tell me that management is in a meeting and the security guy went home already. So I clock out and went to the bathroom. I waited in the bathroom for about 10 minutes before coming out and attempting to go to my car. When I walked around the corner through the security things, he wasn't sitting on the bench right there, like I've been expecting. I relaxed a little before I realized he was standing just outside the door, far away enough to keep it from closing, and smoking a cigarette. He had his back turned to it, though luckily, I never went out the front doors. I always went on the corridor and out the side door. I quietly closed the door behind me, so maybe I wouldn't catch his attention. I rushed to my car, which was very fortunately close to the building. As I'm quick walking to my car, I hear him shout, "Hey, why are you avoiding me? Come here." At this point, I take off into a full sprint, which is not easy because I'm wearing Sperry's, so it's like running in clogs. I get to my car, get and lock the doors as I'm starting it, and don't even bother with my seatbelt. By that point, he had made it almost all the way to my car, and was still yelling, telling me that he just wanted to talk. I took off as fast as I could, and took the longest way home, with the most turns and twists possible. When I got home, I told my dad about the experience, and he was so angry that no one had answered my calls or believed me. He called the store manager the next day and complained. I was never contacted about his complaint. But from that night on, whenever I saw that guy, I would run to the bathroom. Or if I couldn't get away, I would put out my lane closed sign and turn off my light so he couldn't get in my line. You always hear people talking about the people of Walmart as being trashy, but they never tell you that a select few are scary as hell. To start the story off, I'm 15 years old, but I look a tad bit older still. I probably couldn't be mistaken for more than 17 years old. I'm 5'2" and 110 pounds, soaking wet. Anyway, the other day, I was walking around Walmart, looking for some new room decor, and buying some hair dye. I went to the hair dye all by myself, and ran into an older man. He told me he was looking for some for his granddaughter, but couldn't find the exact color she wanted, because he didn't have his reading glasses on. He told me the color he wanted, and I quickly helped him find it. I also asked a few other questions, like how long his granddaughter's hair was, how dark it was, just to make sure he got the right amount of dye, and to tell him if he needed to bleach or not, since the dye was a bright Barbie pink. After making sure he had everything he would need, he thanked me and walked over to the next aisle. I got my dye and walked off to go look at some more room decor. When I was in the aisle with the bedding sets, I noticed the man was there as well. I just assumed that maybe his granddaughter's birthday was coming up and he was getting some nice stuff for her since this was the girls' bedding aisle. I grabbed the set I wanted and went to go take a look at some fake plants. When I got to the aisle, I noticed the man was there too. I turned a smile at him when I realized that he no longer have the hair dye with him or any bedding. That's about when I started to panic. My phone had died at some point because it was dead when I got it out to pocket. Call my brother. At this point, I remembered that my mom had told me if I ever felt like I was in danger at Walmart to go over to the phone cases, since they have to keep them locked in a case so you don't steal them. There would always be a worker there to help. When I got to the phone cases, I asked for assistance getting a case from the locked box. When the worker came over to help me, I quickly explained my situation and pointed the man out to him. Me and the worker both realized at this point that the man was sitting down and seemed to be recording or taking pictures of me. The man told me to give him a second before handing me a random case from the box and going into the back room. The other worker pretended like he was having trouble ringing me up. Then I noticed the worker that had gotten me the case come out of the back room in his everyday clothes before circling around the aisles and coming up to me. He very loudly asked me where I'd been. I told him I was just getting a new case, but there seemed to be a problem getting it rung up. He pretended to argue with me before grabbing the case, handing it to the cashier, and telling him we wouldn't be buying it, and we were leaving. Now the worker walked me all the way back to the self-checkout and waited with me until my brother got there with his stuff. I don't know what the man's intentions were exactly, but I know they weren't any good. I'm very thankful to the Walmart workers who helped me out of what could have been a very dangerous situation. I'm gonna start off this story by saying that at the time this happened, I was a 19-year-old sophomore in college. I was living on campus in their apartment-style dorms. And my college wasn't exactly in the nicest part of the city. I usually drive a little bit farther to go grocery shopping, so I could be in a bit more of a safer area. The night this happened, I was going to cook dinner and realized I didn't have some of the spices I needed. Normally, I would have just said, "Oh, forget it," and made something else. The meat had already been thawed for a day or so though, so I didn't need to cook it. I debated just going to the Walmart. That was about 2 minutes away from my campus, but it was getting late, and I didn't want to go there by myself in the dark. That Walmart is right next to a major highway. And being a girl by herself, I felt quite uncomfortable risking it instead. I went to the Walmart that was about 20 minutes away, a few towns over. I got to that other Walmart and bought my spices, along with a few other things, and checked out no problem. By the time I was done though, it was now completely dark out. I was back at the driver's side of my car, putting my few bags into the passenger seat, when I noticed a woman. She was an African American, maybe in her 50s, and she was looking at the back of my car. At the time, I drove a really old car, and if you knew your cars, you would be surprised that it was still running. Even I've had a few people in the past, older men usually, look at it and come up and ask me about my car. I figured that this is what the lady was doing, and I kind of ignored it, until out of the corner of my eye, I saw her come around my car and stop about 2 feet behind where I was standing. I was parked next to a parking lot median, so it's not like she was getting in a car next to me or something. Excuse me," she said. I turned around and said yes, kind of prepared to answer, "What year or model is your car?" "My church is giving out leftover boxes of food from our food drive to people in need. Could I perhaps give you one? We have them in our car over there." This immediately set off an alarm in my head. I mean, she had just seen me putting my groceries in my car. Why would I need something else after I just went shopping? Also, churches and food pantries around my college were usually cleaned out after they had their shopping days for people who relied heavily on things like food drives. I'd never heard of there being anything that was just left over. I had watched enough Criminal Minds and running a Facebook post to know that something shady was going on here. I stuttered over my words a bit at first, trying to figure out what to say. Finally, I managed to get out of "Oh no. Thank you, I'm good. I'd like to see it go to someone who could actually use it." I felt like that was an okay response. If she was really handing out boxes. "Are you sure? They're just right over here, in my car," she said, taking a step and making the gap between us just that much smaller. I was panicking. As she stepped closer, I tried nonchalantly to put my hand in my bag and look for the small pocket knife my dad had given me. My mind was racing as I tried to find that knife, but also trying to keep my face calm and not suspicious. I repeated to her that I was good, and the box of food should go to someone who could really use it. She finally seemed to let up though, saying, "Okay, well, have a good night, God bless you," and all that sort of stuff. I told her to have a good night as well. Then, as soon as her back was turned, I got in my car and locked all the doors. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I noticed the car she was walking to had 3 large men standing at the trunk of it. They were barely illuminated by the parking lot lights, but I could see it was an early to white Nissan. As I tried to go down the parking lot aisle as fast as I could, I saw the men looking at my car, just like the woman had. I then noticed where their eyes were shifted to. They weren't just staring at my car, they were staring at my license plate. Just as I got to the end of the aisle, waiting to turn, I saw 2 of the men get in the front seats, and the other man and the woman get in the back. Their car started, and they started to pull out too. I was having a full-blown panic attack. Now, just a week before, my friend had posted something on Facebook about how the men had followed her and her mom through a Walmart. Again, I had watched enough crime shows to know that this was not painting a pretty picture. Well, I finally got my opportunity to turn, but that car was coming up behind me. I made the quick decision to take a really odd way back to campus. I made a ton of turns and went through a lot of small streets instead of taking one of the main roads. I don't think I saw the car again after I pulled out of the parking lot, but I was definitely not risking it. By the time I got back to my college, I had calmed down a little bit. I had started to wonder to myself, maybe you're overthinking this. Maybe there actually are just some good people in the world. I decided that maybe they really were giving out boxes of food, and hopefully, it went to someone in need. That was until I was walking behind my car, headed towards my building. There was an SF, faintly written in white sidewalk chalk, on the brown paint of my car. I was shocked and terrified, knowing I definitely did not put that there. I said out loud, "Oh my fucking god." I practically dropped my bags on the ground and rushed to wipe the chalk off of the sleeve of my jacket. My car had been tagged. After a few seconds of wiping, the chalk was gone, so I logged my car, grabbed my bags, and raced into my building. I got into my dorm and saw the dinner I was supposed to make, but by now I had lost my appetite completely. I put away everything and went into my bedroom, still reeling over what had happened in the last 45 minutes. I sent the whole story as a Snapchat video to some of my friends, or just as shocked as I was. My one friend, Sarah, said she thought the SF might have stood for single female. It made sense, which made the whole experience that much scarier. I called my mom afterward and told her everything that happened. By the end of the call, she was sending me an Amazon package with pepper spray in it. I didn't go out after dark or by myself for about 2 weeks. After that happened, I'd have a friend from campus or work go with me, or I just wouldn't go at all. The whole situation was terrifying, but I think the strangest part about it all was that was supposed to have been the safer area. I drove all the way to that Walmart because I had a bad feeling about the one that was closest to me. I started going to the Walmart that was closer to me after that, and I'd never had a negative experience at the closer one since I started going. It's still hard to believe that all that stuff I'd seen on TV, in the internet, could have almost happened to me too. This is my second posting that happened after the bus incident. Actually bought a car right after that. I had a car loan to pay off, but I was so shook up after that, I decided it was worth it. Unfortunately, I'm an idiot, and decided one night, in the middle of the night, that I needed to grab something from Walmart. I don't remember what time it was, and honestly, at this point, I can't even remember what I went to go get, but I do remember that I was getting out of my car when I saw a rusted car pull up to the front of the building. The larger person in the driver's seat kind of shoved some skinny, disheveled looking, late teen to early 20-year-old out of the car. They were aggressively ordering him to do something, and then drove off in a hurry. I saw the teenager look at me as I closed my door and hurried into the store. I had a kind of do not involve me mentality. I didn't know what they were doing, I just knew I didn't want to be involved. This only lasted a few minutes though. I had immediately gone into the woman's clothing section because I wanted to be further away from the entrance when he came in, but gosh dang, if that obvious drug addict didn't immediately run up to me. I can be naive, but I'm not completely sheltered. As soon as he opened his mouth, I knew he was gonna ask me for money, and money is a pet peeve of mine. I work hard. I made very little money and had to work extremely hard for it. I was lifting boxes of product, assembling furniture, having to take buses with crazy people before I had a car. If I missed that bus, I would have to walk miles just to get home. I realized at this point, the person who dropped him off had probably ordered him to get money somewhere or another, and I was really annoyed. I could see him preparing himself to try and look pitiful, and opening his eyes wide to look innocent. I guess he didn't understand how insincere he looked. Right off the bat, he came over to me. "Man, can I ask you no?" I immediately cut him off. I didn't want to hear whatever lie he was about to tell me. He tried a few more times, then got really angry and stalked off. pissed at me. He found the lady working in the changing rooms. I could hear him talking to her, in the same insincere tone, complaining about me. To gain some sympathy, she cut him off though, and I heard her call out on the radio very loudly, "Security, come and get this crackhead out of here." I heard him pleading with her, and her yelling at him, for a minute. Security came to escort him out. It was funny in the moment, and I thought it was over after that. I went about my business and checked out. I was about to step out when I suddenly had a thought. Well, you know, that guy is really mad at me. He knows where I parked, and his ride drove off, leaving him there. So that guy was still out there. There were only 4 cars in the parking lot, mine with 2 cars next to it, and one a row after mine. I thought I was overreacting, but I felt like it was a bad idea to go out alone. I stood there for a few minutes, contemplating getting security to walk me out, when I heard someone getting checked out. I looked over to see. It was a very well-built, tall man who seemed nice, so I waited and asked if he could walk me to my car. He was from the car, the row after mine. He didn't mind at all, so I walked with him to my car, locked the door, and he walked to his. I really thought I had overreacted. I thought I was being paranoid, until I pulled out and drove past those 2 cars next to me to leave, and saw that young guy uncrouch from between the 2 cars next to mine and run off. I stopped going out alone at night after that, and started keeping my pepper spray in my hands and parking lots if I did. So this happened about 13 years ago. I was 10 at the time, and my brother was 8. We had just moved to a new town that year, and the Walmart here had this sweet arcade up near the service desk. Every time my parents would bring us grocery shopping, they each give us a few dollars to let us play in the arcade. The town had an incredibly low crime rate, and the arcade was at the front of the store, where dozens of people were checking out. So what could possibly go wrong? My brother was playing the claw machine, while I was standing to the side, trying to help him angle the claw perfectly above a stuffed animal he was trying to get. Quite suddenly, this random hillbilly walked up to the claw machine next to us, inserted a quarter, and began moving the claw around. Most of this time though, it was making eye contact with my brother and smiling. Not even watching the game. He wasn't talking to us, just staring and smiling. He had long, thin brown and silver hair, pulled back in a loose ponytail at the base of his skull, a camo trucker head and a long, scraggly beard. I remember vividly the way that he smelled. Steel beer ashtray, and something that smelled like a sweet yet sour. Dirt perhaps, or maybe a fungus. He tried making small talk with. My brother and I were raised to be aware of strangers, but still be polite. Eventually we got bored of the game we were playing, and I ushered my brother to follow me to a new game, on the opposite side of the arcade. A few seconds later, that man followed us, stationing himself once again, at the claw machine next to us. At some point, an overweight lady walked in and said, "The hillbilly, what are you doing to these little kids?" and snickered at me. He replied, "I'm trying to win them some stuffed animals." She then began playing the claw machine on the other side of us, so that my brother and I were sandwiched between these 2 strange hillbillies. His comment came across as weird to me, because previously, I thought he was maybe trying to win something for his kids. The entire time though, he'd just been following my brother and I from game to game, trying to win us toys. This had been going on for maybe 20 minutes. At this point, they'd followed us to several different machines and spent a lot of money. The games roll 25 cents per play. Each time my brother and I switch machines, they'd follow us over. The hillbilly leans over and says to the lady, "I'm out of money, you got any?" She says, "Nah, I'm broke too." My brother says he is $1 still. Now this is the part that really scared me. I remember listening to these dudes talk about some weird things with us, asking if I have a boyfriend, asking where we go to school, where our parents work, if we've ever done drugs. But when my brother said he had $1, she responded with, The most horrifying thing I'd heard from them yet, the woman suddenly burst out with a "well shit. Give it to him then, boy." Her face was red. The tone in which she shouted was so ear-piercing and gut-wrenching, I can feel the blood drain from my face. My brother looked like he was about to cry. He handed her the dollar, and her face lit up. She laughed it off, almost like she was trying to make it seem like she was joking. When she yelled at us, my father walked up to us a couple minutes later. As I turned to tell him that these people had spent close to $15 to win toys for us, they leave hurriedly before he got a good look at them. My dad was livid. He took us to the front desk and told them what I told him. They made an announcement on the intercom to keep an eye out for these people and to report them to an employee if they saw them. Then they called the police. I don't actually remember this part or much of anything after my father arrived, but this is what he told me. They never did find the couple. The police reviewed security cameras, too blurry to make out any physical details, and told my parents that the couple left the store immediately after my father showed up without any groceries. Every time I see a man or woman in Walmart that looks as I remember them, I get anxiety and try to avoid them.